Well, hello everyone. I'm just sort of setting up here because you can't really see your live stream until you turn on the camera. So let me just get this so you can see more of the palette and everything. And so I think that's pretty good. My high-tech studio here. Okay, so welcome everyone. And in this lesson today, we're going to be finishing the hydrangeas and sunflower painting. I'm painting this with acrylic paint, and let's get started. So I'm painting it on one of these thick canvases that I have around the studio. I think flowers look really good on these canvases when they're on the wall, and you can paint the edges, and then you don't need a frame. So it's kind of a good way to go. So today, to finish this painting, I went and I had just the regular soft gel, but I also went out and got a thing of heavy gel as well. And so let me just see if I can lock the focus so my camera doesn't keep moving. There, I think that's better. It was kind of moving around. So yeah, I've got the heavy gloss and the soft, and I wanted to just show you because a lot of people are just afraid to try things like that. And it's a lot of fun. So I thought, why not do it in this lesson? So to start, there's a lot of things I can start on this painting right away to finish up. So, but I'll mix some of this medium in so you can get an idea of what we're going to be doing with it. So I've got out some of this cobalt blue, and that's just a golden paint. Luckily, I found a larger jar of it. And then I'll put out some of this heavy gloss medium. Last week we used a lot of the one that I had, the soft gel gloss. And the main difference is in all of these mediums is mediums help kind of boost the paint's thickness, and the glazing, the difference between the medium and like the glazing liquid is one makes it more fluid and sort of, I think it slows, you can buy ones that slow down the process of drying. And these just add more of what the paint's made of, which is basically school glue is the main ingredient to all these acrylic paints. And you can see when it dries, it will dry transparent. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So you want to make sure you have enough paint mixed in. So I can really make sure I have enough of that cobalt blue. And you can mix as much as you want, in there, and it will look amazing when it dries. So I'm going to put it out also for the sunflower. I'm going to mix a little of this cadmium yellow medium. So I'm going to put out a little blob of that. And this is just some of that palette paper that I've got. And how about I'll use some of the soft gel. So right away you can see it's a lot softer. So, and when you can see how it mixes in, it's just already super. There's a big difference between the heavy gloss and the soft. And mainly when the soft gel dries, even if it looks really like icing like this, it will dry a little flatter than the heavy gel. So I got those ready to go, and I have to put that off to the side and for now. And I've got out my little spray bottle. This is one of those stay wet palettes, but I always give everything a little spray because I don't want it to dry out. All right, so now I want to sort of work on getting the center complete there, get a little bit more of that done. So I'm going to use some of this brown oxide and just sort of get some paint in there, see how it looks. And I'm used to painting in oil, so a lot of this is, I'm getting better. I started in acrylic, but then I kind of went to oil, so I'm still a little rusty when I go to paint using acrylic. I still go, wow, okay, that's not, I'm used to the response of the oil more, so sometimes I have to, for example, that transparent brown there looks a little bit too light, so I'm going to add a little cobalt blue, or sorry, this is ultramarine blue. And I also have dioxazine violet out, and that kind of can darken it. Just anything to get the color you want. So I'm just putting a bit of that in. I want to make sure that that's, darker before I start getting the petals completed. So now I can go in and start using some of this. I'll use a little bit of this gel for the petals already because I want to, I'll try to put that in there. I'm going to start the way I was painting last time with the top of the petal and see how that makes that really nice. Now you can see that it's leaving a really nice, like it looks like an oil painting, And so just keep kind of going to go around and just really add the thickness to that paint that's already on there. And remember to follow your own path there. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to remember things like you want the petal strokes to all wind up going down into the center of that sunflower. Like a common mistake that I've noticed is when you get going on something, especially when you really like what you're painting, people will start off like this, but then they'll continue going like this. And then all the strokes are going away from the sunflower. It seems really like, oh, I would never do that, but then it kind of happens. So you have to kind of just remember to bring it back into the center. And at this stage, when we painted the blue hydrangea after, so there's some things you bring the sunflower back to the forefront again. So there'll be some areas you copy over, like I'm doing, and then there's some areas where you want to kind of, add a few marks. Like you can add a few thinner side profile petals there, here and there. Trying to keep the bulk of the paint on the tip of my brush so that I get that. You really want to leave that thick paint stroke, so you kind of have to scoop it up a little and put it on. And so like this sunflower is in front of that sunflower, so I'm going to put a little more, bulk up those ones a little. And remember, it's just practice and trial and error. You'll start to see what works with it for you. So I've got the bright, and then I've got the dark, and then I've kind of lost a nice transition in there in the center there. So for now, I'm going to leave it because you'll see what we can do with acrylic paint, because this will dry as I work on the blue, and we can go back and we can do some glazing in the center there to get the shadow back in. Okay, and another thing I should mention is if you want to try the palette knife with it, we should do a landscape with just palette knife and the acrylic, with the with the gel, but you can kind of use a palette knife on some of those ends too to really get some thick paint. But it's sometimes, for me, the palette knife isn't as, it's a little harder for me to get the design that I want. So I'll just use the brush. And so now I can go and I can work on adding some thick paint to the hydrangea. So I've got all this blue, cobalt blue paint here. I'm just going to bring some over to the side, and I'm going to add a little white to some of it. So I have a few different shades of the cobalt blue, because I don't want to lose my nice shadow. And I'll show you again, that was a lot of fun, how I made the petals kind of simplistically with adding tinting. They call it, I think, tinting your brush. You tint the edges of it, and then you go dark and then you go light. I'll show you that. So I'm just trying to scoop some more cobalt in there. And because I kind of like the lighter blue petals to show a little more. Okay, and you mix up a couple blobs of that, and then so what I want to show you is to get this effect here where it's light and then dark. What I want to do is just get my brush, and I can just use one side here and then use the other side. So now you see I've got sort of half the brush is dark and half of it is light. Now, I've never tried this with the gel, so it might not work, but we can. So you want to make sure the dark side is in the center of the flower, and the light side is the top. So yeah, it does work. We get more, and I'm kind of going like I did with the sunflower. I'm kind of going over those marks that I had. And I kind of went over that one the wrong way, but you can just get your paper towel and make sure you wipe your brush. I'm just going to get a try it on a different brush. This is a little bit, I think, longer of a bristle. And so I'm going to get that paint and I'm kind of blend it a bit like this. Now I can go and make sure the dark side's in, and I'm going to put one right in near this flower here. I think after you put the mark down like that, you put your little petal marks, you can draw some of that blue kind of up into it. Kind of blend it a little. So it's not such a straight line. And that's going to add some nice texture marks on the blue. So now you can sort of get an idea of how it's going to all have a lot of nice texture. So I'm going to do that again. I'm mix up my blue and my light blue and put a few up here. I'm going to put some of those on there, and then we'll try. So that's one technique for those flowers. And then another one is just to go with, you can go with a little bit of a smaller brush, because that might not work for everyone. And just go in with the dark gel and put in some of those darker flowers in there, and then get some of the lighter paint and just sort of blend it in there like that. So you kind of pick what works better for you. Kind of go in and add some of that, blend it a little. I got some yellow in there, which we don't want. And I want to add a little bit of this, I'll try this red into a bit so we get some of that more purpley color in there. So now we have a more darker value of the gel gloss. So I'll just show you, I added a little bit of that quinacridone red in there. And I'm going to mix that. So now I have a little puddle of that there. And down here where it's a little darker, I'm going to put a little bit of that on some of these ones down here. Kind of has a nice purple look to it. I put a little bit in the center of the sunflower. And if you're following along and you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend. It really helps me to grow my channel if you let people know that you like my videos and you're learning stuff. And also, I have a Patreon membership that I have lots and lots of lessons. I do animals and landscapes, and also even seasonal ones like at Christmas time. Make sure you get some nice lighter marks up here. And with hydrangea, I don't really get into too much detail with them. So I got into more detail today than I normally do because I was showing you kind of how to do the different strokes. But realistically, I kind of try to keep it simple because there's so many little things going on with them. So I'm just kind of loosening up some of those other ones. And then when you look at the whole group of them, you can go in now, and some of them have those little kind of light centers. So I'll get a little more white and mix it into some of that gel medium, and just dab a little here and there, just dab one or two that have, that little center part. So we still got lots of work to do. I got the green to do, so I'm gonna use some of this and mix it with the blue, and we'll make some thick green strokes next. So I'm gonna get some of the sap green, and I'm gonna put it next to my yellow here, and we can just go and mix that up. Let me just show you under the camera. Sometimes I sometimes forget that you can't see my whole desk, so I try to put it under here for you. But I'm just mixing in just some sap green and that cad yellow medium to get sort of a lighter green. And another one that looks really pretty, another green, is you get this cad yellow light and a little bit of the cobalt blue, and you get a really pretty, it's more of a cool green because both colors are a little bit cooler. So it's good to mix up your greens a little. So you got the couple greens now to work with. So I'm going to go back and, just make sure you wipe your little palette knife off, or they get messy quick. So then I'm going to go back and get my brush, kind of dab the water out a bit, and now I'm going to look at where I can add on top of those petals. So, and I've done this video in 2 steps, so some of you that are just tuning in probably are like, well, why didn't you just do it, in the beginning? But I wanted to do it in two stages so that you can kind of see how I start, and then if you're following along, you can paint that part and then catch up for the next week. So you can kind of follow along and then paint along during the week. And because we just don't have, unfortunately, we all don't just paint we have lots of other jobs to do. So it's better not to overwhelm yourself. Just do a little bit by little bit, and you'll end up doing more than if you try to do everything. So that's my theory. So, and then I'm going to just block in a little bit and just make sure to get a few really chunky, blobs of paint there, because that's the whole point. You're getting this texture in there. I'm going to put in a little green between those two. So it's a lot of fun when you get going and you can see that thick paint. And like I said, I did a lot of art shows, and people would always walk by and want to see if the paint was like oil or not. They'd always want to touch it, and it's kind of funny. All right, so there you can see now we've got the green with lots of texture, and now we can go back to our sunflowers, because I bet you, yep, that's pretty much dry. So you're going to get a little bit of everything in this lesson. I'm going to go now and get this liquid glazing medium, and I'll just show you how you can do a little glazing over. It's a fun way to do the shadow. And my glaze doesn't want to come out. Hang on one sec. There we go. So I'm just going to put on a little bit, because I don't have a whole lot of space to cover. So I'm just going to use a little bit of that and a little bit of this transparent red oxide, which kind of dried up while we were here. So I'm just going to mix it into the medium. And so you mix a little bit of that in. You can see how transparent that is. And then you can go to your flower and you can glaze that on and just sort of bring in some of that shadow to the top part of the flower. And if it looks a little bit, you're like, oh, it looks kind of milky, that will all go away when it dries. So you see how in between the petals, I can put a little bit of that. And it does look a little cloudy, but don't worry, it will dry. It will dry clear. So now you've got that shadow in there with like pretty much not a lot of effort, which I love. It just looks so much, now it just looks so much more together. And if you wanted more, you could get a little brown oxide in there and just go a little darker near the flower. And don't worry, even if it looks like that's kind of too much, it will dry pretty clear. So I really enjoy the glazing, whoopsies, the glazing element of these paints. So that's another thing you can do. Oopsies. And now I'm going to go and see what we can do. We have a little bit of background here, and I feel like it's not, the background that I have is just not so nice. So I want to make it a little bit prettier. So I'm going to take maybe some of this, I put out some of this turquoise, let's see, and got this white, and there's not a lot of background, so I feel like a little bit of that turquoise will maybe make it look more alive. So I'm gonna go in there. And oh, thanks, Stevie. Yeah, I really like how the gel pops everything. So this is just a little bit of this this turquoise color, and I'm adding it with some white. And you can, if it's too light, you can darken it a little. But I kind of wanted it to look a little bit more clean. And then I want to go in with the edges a little so it's not just so outlined looking, and kind of pop in a few marks there. And you can even find a place where you can pop a little bit of that color in. And even down here. There you go. So I feel like that looks a little better than that dark background. And now I feel when I'm looking at this, what does it need next? You kind of have to ask yourself, well, you know, what does your painting need? And I would say I kept it very simple with the colors, so everything's super easy to follow. There's not a lot of, it's just cobalt blue and white, and then I added a little bit of that quinacridone red in some of these darker purple marks. But we could add a little bit more detail in the center. So I'm just going to get, oh, I must add some white on my brush. I'm going to go and get a little bit of this brown oxide, a little ultra blue, and just sort of, I want to add a bit of just a little bit of details on the edges. They're just kind of boring. So just a few of those little seed marks that you see on sunflowers. Sort of dab some of those in. Same with up here. The lines were just too tight. So you kind of look at around your painting and just sort of see what other details you want to add. And I might even add a little bit of a highlight in the center here, just near where it's a little lighter. Use a little yellow ochre and that brown oxide, just put a little bit of light in there. And I'm softening the edges a bit with that brown oxide, just sort of soften that edge in. And now I want to add a little more of a highlight to a few of these petals. So I'm going to use some of that cad yellow light and just do a few. And you can just put them in there and then see what you think. And you can always add a little bit of the ultramarine blue to it. But I want to just kind of highlight some of them. This one over here, we're just kind of ignoring. So I'm just going to add a little, and then I'm going to use a little bit of the cad yellow and sort of go in between the two again, like blend in a little there. So just to blend, take some of the cad yellow medium and some of the cad yellow light, just so it's not a huge difference. And I'll get a little bit of that darker color in there, that transparent red oxide, and just sort of blend it a bit. I got a little bit of green there, so I'm going to go over that. Oh, and I definitely want to get a little highlight on the tips of those. Those sunflower edges there. And you can just bring a little bit of that, using the edge of your brush, you can bring a little bit of that yellow in there. It really looks pretty to have a few of those lines. If you don't like some, like this one maybe is a little too thick, just go in with some of that darker mixture of brown oxide and the yellow and kind of mix that in there. And I'm adding a little red in there. A little bit of that quinacridone into that mixture. Just add just a little bit here and there if the red is okay. And then as the acrylic dries, you get a bit of air, you get some areas where the paint is, you know, a little bit darker than you want it. So I'm going to go back to my gel here and mixing a little bit of that yellow into the green, and just sort of maybe a tiny bit of yellow ochre in there, because yellow ochre has a lot of white in it, so thicken it up a little. And then I'll add a little bit of some lighter green up here. Just kind of highlight some of those greens a little so they're not all so dark. And then just kind of getting a little on my brush, and then this flower over here, we've been kind of ignoring, but I'll add a little bit of detail just because it's kind of unfinished. So I'll get some cad yellow medium here and something just to kind of darken it a little. You can add a little transparent brown oxide. I think this is like a transparent, this burnt sienna sort of color. And just sort of finish that one off. It's sort of down there looking kind of just adding a little dab here and there. I'm not changing it too much, but just sort of darkened it a little. And sometimes I like to take a little orange and put a tiny bit of orange in the sunflowers a little. And even actually in a few of the, if there's a lot of blue, a little hint of orange here and there can look really pretty. So just a few, colors dashed around to mix it up a little. And then I'll just sort of go back with my gel medium and just really make sure I have some of those edges that I really, wanted to show off a bit. And you can even take a little bit of yellow because, there is lots of yellow. And you can put a little bit of a outline or two on just a little bit of that yellow around. Just to show the colors kind of bouncing around there. And so I think maybe the last thing I do is get some of this. I had some of this Payne's gray out there, and I'll get some of that Payne's gray and mix it in to the brown oxide and just put a few real, a little bit of dark right down on the edge there to really make that sunflower center kind of pop a little. And same within here. And you can put the odd really dark spot in the green. Just make it look kind of like a shape that's organic. Don't just make like a, big square or something, but put some real darks into the background. Just to make some of that, just to add a little bit of contrast in there. There. And then same with the light. Now that I've added some dashes of that dark around, I'm going to add a little bit of final touches to my hydrangea here with this light blue. Go and add a little more white into it. And you want to make sure it's like a real highlight to the edges. And just go get a little bit of that on your brush and go in and just put some real brighter highlights on a few of those. And just make sure not to cover up down here because you kind of want to keep that more shadowy color there. But that's kind of what I would do there. And then You could put a little bit of the cobalt blue, a bit of that on the stem here, just to, you know, show that it's kind of in the shadow. But other than that, I just think the more you mess around with it, the more you can mess things up. So I feel like I like this, you know, the way it turned out, and I think it's a good lesson. So if you haven't seen part 1, you can go back and watch part 1 of this. And for those of you who are members on my Patreon channel, it'll be up on Patreon with the reference photos and everything. And I look forward to next week. If you go to my Instagram, you can vote on what we should paint next. I have, or you can send me a message or write it in the comments below this video. What would you like to see me paint more of? And I'd be happy to add it to my list of things to paint. And thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.